Suez Canal is a really important passage that connects the Red Sea, that washes the shores of Sudan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, and the Mediterranean Sea, that washes the shores of all Europe. So, our issue begins here with this guy, Nasser. Yeah, he was the kind of like the minister of Egypt, after the World War II in the 50s, really tough era. Yeah, I know he had a big nose, and yeah, as you could imagine, he was known as the Egyptian Marlon Brando. Anyways, Nasser stuck to his plan. He underlooked the process of decolonization, in which countries like France and Britain wanted to diminish. So basically, they just wanted to exercise their forces as much as they could in a such important route as the Suez Canal. But do you know why the Suez Canal was a really important route in the middle of the 20th century, and it caused a lot of conflicts? So basically, the Suez Canal had a really important political stance considering their empires, the empires that surrounded it. So basically, France and Britain and their colonies in Africa and Asia. So considering the process of decolonization, it was really important for both countries to maintain the power of the Suez Canal, even if it was to support Egypt and have their hands on puppets. Furthermore, there were really important economical implications, considering the opportunities that the canal brought due to its location. So, as we know, the Suez Canal was almost half of the prior route, and it was really important for commerce, considering that it connected two of the most important seas in that era, the Pacific and the Mediterranean. And finally, it was really important militarily as well, considering the crises that were happening in countries surrounding it, like Turkey, for example, where we see generals and communist ideas spreading, which was really not what countries like France, Britain, and the United States wanted to.
This particular conflict symbolizes way more than just a conflict between two European powers with an African power over a certain piece of land. This particular event symbolizes the loss of strength from the European colonizers on its colonies, since the British and the French did not seem to have the same influence as they had before. The two superpowers of the century, the United States and the Soviet Union, were, at first, indifferent to the ongoing conflict on Egypt, though, after the Israeli invaded Egypt, that they quickly shifted their ideas. Consequently, the crisis happening in Egypt became of a much larger scale, since it now also represented the conflict of ideologies between capitalists and communists, not only the territorial dispute of the British and the French against the Egyptians. Since the United Nations idealized a peaceful coexistence of nations around the globe, especially after the World War II era, they decided to intervene in the ongoing conflict in the Canal. The UN wanted a ceasefire between both parts of the conflict. We want to make sure such deal was achieved by occupying the land with their troops so that both parts would keep their ends of their deal. The involvement of the United States and Soviet Union represented a big shift in relation to the importance of their new spheres of influence. As of now, both nations were so focused on the Middle East that it became clear that such area was now more valuable and important to the nations than Europe. As an example, they focused on the Suez Canal and crisis rather than the Hungarian Revolution, which would be a clear example of conflicts that represented the Cold War tensions arising in Europe. This whole conflict can be traced to the decline of power the British and the French had over their colonies. Since the colonizers did not have as much influence as before, politics was not an option anymore. Thus, the outbreak of the crisis and consequent war.
So, what was the crisis' significance? Firstly, it shifted the role of the UN. Now the United Nations had a template to send troops. During the Suez crisis, the United Nations had three main functions: evacuate conflict areas, check; separate Egyptian and Israeli forces, check; and stay in the area to make sure the ceasefire actually occurred, check. Basically, the British and the French perceived their colonies were slipping away from them. So this made Great Britain even closer to the United States, while France left NATO and came closer to continental countries. Indeed, the Suez Crisis was the last time the United States of America opposed Israel, as the Eisenhower Doctrine was created to gain influence in the region, as a method to provide assistance to Middle Eastern countries to prevent the spread of communism. However, Nasser showed the world that he didn't need assistance from either side. Boom! As a matter of fact, authoritarian leaders like Nasser learned that by opposing communism, they would be strengthening their relationship with the United States of America.